Sarah Matthews stared at her reflection in the staff bathroom mirror, adjusting her white uniform for the third time that morning. Dark circles under her eyes betrayed another sleepless night spent picking up extra shifts to cover her brother's mounting medical bills. At 32, she'd become an expert at hiding exhaustion behind a professional smile. The fluorescent lights flickered as she pulled her blonde hair into a neat bun, following Memorial General Hospital's strict protocols. Her tiny apartment in the less desirable part of town and the 10-year-old Honda in the parking lot told the story of sacrifices made for her nursing career. But Sarah had learned early in foster care that dignity wasn't about possessions. It was about how you carried yourself. The morning huddle brought the usual announcements until charge nurse Diana Wells dropped the bombshell. "Marcus Bennett was admitted last night," she announced, her voice dripping with manufactured concern. "Yes, Mum, that Marcus Bennett." The room erupted in whispers. Everyone knew about the tech millionaire's skiing accident splashed across the morning news. Diana continued, "He's temporarily paralyzed from the waist down. We need someone to handle his case." Her eyes swept the room, lingering on Sarah with barely concealed disdain. "Any volunteers?" The silence was deafening. Sarah thought of her brother's upcoming surgery and the overtime pay this case would bring. "I'll take it," she said quietly. Diana's perfectly manicured nails tapped against her clipboard. "How generous of you, Sarah, though I'm sure Mr. Bennett is used to more premium care." Snickers rippled through the room. Sarah straightened her spine, remembering the foster home mantra, "Your worth isn't determined by others' opinions." Room 501 was different from the rest of the hospital wing. Custom medical equipment worth more than Sarah's yearly salary lined the walls. The patient lay still, his muscular frame incongruous with the hospital gown. Dark stubble shadowed his jaw, and his hands, now helpless, showed calluses that surprised her. Not the soft hands she'd expected from a tech millionaire. "Mr. Bennett?" Sarah approached the bed, checking his vitals. "I'm Sarah Matthews, your primary nurse." His eyes flickered open, startlingly alert despite the pain medication. "Call me Marcus," he managed, voice rough. "Looks like I'll be needing your help with everything." Sarah noticed the shame flickering across his face. She'd seen it before, proud people confronting their temporary helplessness. "That's what I'm here for," she replied professionally, "and you'll be back on your feet before you know it." A knock interrupted them. Tom Parker, the day shift orderly, swaggered in. "Hey, Sarah," he smirked. "Heard you volunteered for diaper duty with the golden boy here. Really climbing the corporate ladder, huh?" Sarah saw Marcus's jaw clench. Before she could respond, Diana appeared in the doorway. "Sarah, dear," she called sweetly, "make sure you take extra special care of Mr. Bennett. We wouldn't want him thinking we provide common care." They left, laughing. Sarah busied herself checking Marcus's IV, pretending not to notice his burning ears or clenched fists. "I can request another nurse," he said quietly. Sarah met his gaze steadily. "Mr. Bennett, Marcus, I've been a nurse for 10 years. I've helped people at their most vulnerable moments. There's nothing common about providing care with dignity." She adjusted his pillow with practiced efficiency. "Now, shall we discuss your treatment plan?" Something shifted in Marcus's expression. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition. Neither of them knew it yet, but this moment would change both their lives forever. By her third day caring for Marcus Bennett, Sarah had established a routine. She arrived early, reviewed his charts and prepared his morning care before most staff started their shifts. It offered privacy, something she knew Marcus valued as he adjusted to his temporary dependence on others. "Marketing genius can't market himself out of a diaper," Tom snickered during the morning break. Sarah focused on her coffee, but Diana wasn't finished. "It must be so rewarding, Sarah, helping the less fortunate," Diana said, smoothing her designer scrubs. "Even if they're worth millions." Sarah gathered her supplies for Marcus's morning care, ignoring the whispers that followed her down the corridor. Room 501's morning light painted shadows across Marcus's face as he stared out the window. "Good morning," Sarah said, setting up his medications. "Sleep well as one can while plotting their escape." Marcus attempted humor, but his voice carried an edge of frustration. "The board meeting can wait until you're stronger," Sarah interrupted gently, checking his vitals. "Your temporary paralysis needs time to resolve." Marcus's hand curled into a fist. "Do you know what it's like, going from running $1 billion company to this?" Sarah paused, meeting his gaze. "No, but I know what it's like to have your dignity questioned daily. Foster care teaches you that pretty quickly." Something shifted in Marcus's expression. Before he could respond, Diana swept in, all polished smile and calculated concern. "Mr. Bennett, I hope our Sarah is providing adequate care." Her emphasis on adequate made Sarah's jaw clench. "I can always assign someone more experienced." Marcus's voice turned sharp. "Sarah's care has been excellent, though I question the professionalism of staff members who discuss patients in break rooms." Diana's smile faltered. As she retreated, Sarah began Marcus's physical therapy exercises, hiding her own surprise at his defense. "They don't know you used to code in your garage," Sarah said quietly, supporting his leg through a stretch. At his startled look, she added, "I read your company's history. Started with nothing but student loans and determination. You did your homework." Marcus grimaced through another stretch. "Most people just see the end result." "Most people see what they want to see." Sarah adjusted his position. "They see me changing adult diapers and assume that's all I'm capable of. They see your wealth and assume you've never struggled." The physical therapy session continued in contemplative silence. Later, as Sarah documented his progress, she overheard Tom in the hallway. "Bet she's hoping for a sugar daddy," he laughed to another orderly. "Why else would anyone volunteer for bedpan duty with a millionaire?" Sarah's pen stilled. Through the door's window, she saw Marcus's reflection in the morning light. His eyes were open, his jaw tight. He'd heard everything. That evening, Sarah found an anonymous note in her locker. Gold Digger's Guide to Nursing. Chapter 1. Target the rich ones when they're down. She crumpled the note, squared her shoulders, and headed home. Tomorrow would be another day of providing care with dignity, regardless of what others thought of her motives. Friday brought rain and a stack of files that would change everything. Sarah discovered them while organizing Marcus's personal effects, documents that had arrived with him from the accident scene. As she sorted through them, a newspaper clipping fluttered to the floor. Anonymous Donor Funds Foster Care Education Program. The article detailed a $10 million donation to support foster children through college. The donor had refused recognition, but Sarah recognized the foundation's name from Marcus's company documents. "Find anything interesting?" Marcus's voice startled her. He'd been watching, his green eyes sharp despite the morning medication. "You never mentioned your foundation," Sarah said, holding up the clipping. "It's not something I advertise." His voice carried no pride, only quiet certainty. "Success means nothing if you pull up the ladder behind you." Before Sarah could respond, Dr. Richards entered for morning rounds. The neurologist's assessment was promising. Feeling was returning to Marcus's legs faster than expected. Small victories. "Excellent care makes all the difference," Dr. Richards noted, reviewing Sarah's detailed charts. "Your attention to his physical therapy schedule is paying off." Diana, hovering nearby, cut in smoothly. "We should rotate nurses, give others a chance to contribute to Mr. Bennett's recovery." "No," Marcus said firmly. "I prefer consistency in my care." Later, changing his sheets, Sarah found another document, a draft of a living will. Marcus had designated all his wealth to various foster care initiatives in case of his death. The date on the document was years old. "You've been doing this all along," she said quietly, helping him sit up. "The tech millionaire image is what people expect," he finished. "It's easier to let them believe what they want, like it's easier to let your colleagues think what they want about you." Sarah adjusted his pillows, thinking about masks and assumptions. "Sometimes the truth is too complicated for people to handle. Or too simple," Marcus added, wincing as he shifted position. "They want elaborate motivations, greed, ambition, ulterior motives. They can't accept that sometimes people just do good things because it's right." The afternoon brought another round of whispers. Sarah overheard fragments in the break room, probably Googled his net worth before volunteering, and wonder what she does during sponge baths. She was recording Marcus's vital signs when Tom entered with fresh towels, his smirk firmly in place. "Need help with the sponge bath, Sarah? I'm sure Mr. Bennett would appreciate a man's touch." Before either could respond, Marcus's tablet chimed with a video call. The screen showed his executive board, waiting for their weekly update. Tom's face reddened as Marcus answered the call, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to commanding rooms, even from a hospital bed. "Ladies and gentlemen, excuse the interruption. We're in the middle of medical care. Sarah, please continue with the vitals. Everyone else," his eyes fixed pointedly on Tom, "can leave." That evening, organizing supplies, Sarah found a folder marked Future Initiatives. Inside were plans for healthcare technology development, focusing on patient dignity and care quality. The drafts were dated months before his accident. Sometimes, Sarah realized, life's greatest revelations come not in grand moments, but in quiet discoveries between vital checks and medication rounds. Social media made everything worse. Sarah discovered this one Tuesday morning when a nurse's aide thrust her phone forward during breakfast break. On the screen was a poorly edited meme. Sarah's face photoshopped onto a gold digger's body, standing over a hospital bed with dollar signs in her eyes. "It's gone viral in the hospital group chat," the aide said, not quite hiding her amusement. "There's a whole thread." Sarah's coffee turned bitter in her mouth. She'd weathered 3 weeks of snide comments and knowing looks, but this felt different, more permanent, more public. Marcus noticed her distraction during morning care. "Something's wrong," he said, watching her check his IV with less than her usual precision. "Nothing I can't handle," Sarah replied, but her hands trembled slightly as she recorded his improving vital signs. His leg movement was getting stronger, small twitches becoming more controlled each day. "You know," Marcus said carefully, "I once had an employee leak confidential information because she thought it would harm my reputation. Instead, it revealed a charitable initiative I'd kept private. Sometimes people's attempts to hurt us backfire." Before Sarah could respond, Diana swept in with Dr. Richards for rounds. "Sarah, dear," she said sweetly, "there's a staff meeting about proper patient-nurse relationships this afternoon. Mandatory attendance." The meeting was exactly what Sarah expected. HR discussed professional boundaries while people snickered behind their hands. She felt their stares, heard their whispers, "Probably sleeps in his room," and "Wonder what his girlfriend thinks." That evening, Sarah found her locker decorated with Monopoly money and a crude drawing of a nurse with a ball and chain. As she cleaned it off, her phone buzzed with a text from her brother. "Need another loan for physical therapy?" She closed her eyes, remembering why she'd taken this assignment in the first place. The overtime pay was making a difference for her family, even if her reputation was in tatters. Returning to Marcus's room for evening rounds, she overheard him on the phone. "No, I don't want to pursue legal action against the ski resort, but I am interested in developing that patient care technology we discussed. Yes, I've gained some insights during my stay." Their eyes met as she entered. Something in his expression suggested he was seeing more than just a nurse checking vitals. "Sarah," he said after she'd finished her checks, "did you know that before I built my tech company, I worked as a janitor? People used to whisper about me too. Said I was stealing office supplies, sleeping in the building. Humans fear what they don't understand." "And what don't they understand about me?" Sarah asked, straightening his blankets. "That true dignity isn't about status," he replied. "It's about how you treat people when no one's watching, or maybe especially when everyone is watching." Later that night, Sarah found another note in her locker, but this time it was different. A letter from a patient's family she'd cared for months ago, thanking her for her kindness during their mother's final days. She'd forgotten about the letter, filed away and forgotten during better times. Sometimes, she realized, you need reminders of who you are when the world tries to tell you differently. The morning everything nearly fell apart started like any other. Sarah arrived early, checked Marcus's vitals, and helped him with his increasingly successful mobility exercises. His legs were responding better each day, though he still needed complete assistance for personal care. Then she found her locker had been broken into. Her spare uniform was missing, replaced by a French maid costume with a note, "More appropriate for your gold-digging duties." Her family photo was defaced, her brother's face circled with the words, "Is this why you're hunting millionaires?" Sarah's hands shook as she closed the locker. For the first time in weeks, she felt tears threatening to fall. She fled to the staff bathroom, locking herself in a stall. Her phone buzzed. Another rejected loan application for her brother's treatment. The overtime from Marcus's care was helping, but it wasn't enough. The walls seemed to close in as memories from foster care flooded back. The whispers, the accusations, the assumptions about her motives every time she tried to get ahead. "Sarah?" A soft knock on the bathroom door. "Your patient in 501 is asking for you." A new nurse, Karen, someone who hadn't joined in the mockery. Sarah splashed water on her face, straightened her uniform, and headed to Marcus's room. She found him attempting to sit up independently, his face strained with effort. "You shouldn't do that without assistance," she said automatically, moving to help him. "And you shouldn't let them break you," he replied, his eyes meeting hers in the reflection of his room's window. "I heard about the locker." Sarah's professional mask cracked slightly. "I should request a transfer. It's becoming, Running away won't help, Marcus interrupted. Trust me, I tried that once. Lost my first company because I couldn't handle the rumors and sabotage. Almost gave up entirely. What changed? I realized that letting them win meant betraying everyone who believed in me, including myself. He grimaced as he shifted position. Also, I really need your help with physical therapy today. My legs are killing me. Sarah laughed despite herself, the sound catching in her throat. As she helped him through his exercises, he continued talking. You know what the worst part of success is? Everyone assumes you've never failed, never struggled. They see the end result and create their own story about how you got there. Like assuming every nurse who helps you is looking for a sugar daddy. Sarah's voice was bitter. Exactly. Marcus managed to move his left leg independently, a small triumph. But here's what I learned. Their stories say more about them than about you. By the end of her shift, Sarah had made a decision. She wouldn't quit. She'd document every incident, every note, every defaced photo, not for revenge but for protection, both for herself and for future nurses who might face similar treatment. As she gathered her things to leave, she found a new note in her locker, but this one was different, written in Marcus's strong handwriting. Dignity isn't given or taken, it's maintained. See you tomorrow. Sarah squared her shoulders and walked to her car, head held high. Tomorrow would be another day of proving them wrong, one patient care task at a time. The next 4 weeks brought changes so subtle that only Sarah noticed at first. Marcus's left leg responded to stimulation with increasing regularity. His right leg, though still largely unresponsive, showed promising nerve activity during morning assessments. Tell me what you see, Dr. Richards asked during rounds, observing Marcus's progress chart. Sarah detailed the improvements: increased muscle response, better circulation, growing periods of sensation. Her meticulous notes had tracked every small victory, every setback, creating a comprehensive picture of his recovery. Excellent documentation, Dr. Richards nodded. This kind of detailed observation is invaluable for treatment planning. Diana, standing nearby, pursed her lips. Perhaps we're being too optimistic. Temporary paralysis can be unpredictable. But that afternoon, during physical therapy, Marcus proved her wrong. While Sarah supported his left leg through the prescribed exercises, his toes moved. Not just a twitch, but a deliberate curl. Did you see that? Marcus's voice cracked with emotion. Sarah nodded, already documenting the milestone. Try again. The movement was stronger this time. Small, but unmistakable. Page Dr. Richards, Sarah instructed a passing aide, her own excitement carefully contained behind professional composure. The news spread quickly through the hospital. Sarah overheard the whispers change tone. Fastest recovery they've seen, and her treatment plan actually worked. That evening, reviewing his charts, Sarah found a tablet among Marcus's things. It was open to his company's internal development page. The header read, Project Dignity, Revolutionizing Patient Care Through Technology. It's not ready for announcement yet, Marcus said, noticing her discovery, but the experience here has shaped its direction. Sarah studied the project outline: innovations in patient monitoring, dignity-preserving care protocols, systems for tracking micro-improvements in recovery. She recognized elements of her own methods in the proposals. You've been taking notes, she observed. So have you. He nodded toward her detailed charts. Your documentation system is more effective than any software we've developed. Before Sarah could respond, Tom entered with the evening medication trolley. Still playing Florence Nightingale? He smirked. Though I guess it's paying off. For everyone. Marcus's voice cut through the air like steel. Mr. Parker, is there something specific you need? Tom retreated, but not before Sarah caught his scowl. Later, she found her careful notes on Marcus's recovery had been copied and annotated with crude comments, left where she would find them. She simply started a new set of notes, more detailed than before. Small victories, she had learned, often came disguised as setbacks. That night, as she helped Marcus prepare for sleep, he managed to shift position with minimal assistance. Another milestone. Progress isn't always dramatic, he said, settling against his pillows. Sometimes it's just about proving them wrong, one movement at a time. Sarah adjusted his blankets, thinking about progress and perception, victories and vindication. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, the small wins were enough. 6 weeks into Marcus's recovery, everything changed. It started during morning care when he managed to swing his legs over the bed's edge without assistance. Sarah documented the achievement, but before she could help him back, Diana burst in with an administrative entourage. "Mr. Bennett," she beamed, "we're here to discuss your transfer to our premium care wing, given your status and improving condition." "My status?" Marcus's voice carried a dangerous edge. "You mean my ability to pay for premium mockery instead of standard mockery?" The room fell silent. Diana's smile faltered. "For 6 weeks," Marcus continued, "I've listened to your staff's comments, every whisper, every joke, every crude insinuation about Nurse Matthews's character." The administrator stepped forward. "Mr. Bennett, I assure you, I've documented everything," Marcus cut in. "Every incident, every name, including the break-in to Sarah's locker and the social media harassment." Sarah's hands stilled on the chart she was updating. She hadn't known he was keeping records. "The only person in this hospital who treated me with consistent dignity was Sarah Matthews," Marcus said, managing to stand with minimal support. "The same nurse you've tormented for doing her job exceptionally well." Diana's face had lost all color. "We were just what?" Marcus's voice remained calm, but his eyes blazed. "Just undermining a dedicated healthcare professional. Just creating a hostile work environment. Just demonstrating everything wrong with patient care in modern hospitals." He reached for his phone. "My company's new healthcare technology division needs a testing ground. I was considering this hospital, but now..." He let the implications hang in the air. The administrative team retreated, leaving Sarah and Marcus alone. The silence stretched between them. "You knew," Sarah finally said. "All along. Every word," he confirmed. "I was conscious enough to hear it all, even in the early days. I wanted to understand how this hospital really operated when they thought no one important was listening." Sarah processed this revelation, remembering every cruel comment, every snide remark they thought their wealthy patient couldn't hear. "What happens now?" she asked. Marcus managed a few supported steps, his strongest movement yet. Now we show them what real patient care looks like, starting with some overdue changes in staff conduct policies." That afternoon, Sarah found her defaced family photo replaced with a new one, professionally framed. A note accompanied it. "Dignity isn't bought, it's earned, and you've earned it 1,000 times over." The whispers in the hallway had changed tone again, this time tinged with fear. But Sarah simply continued her work, documenting progress, maintaining standards, proving that professional integrity outlasts malice every time. Monday morning brought the hospital administrators back to room 501, this time with different expressions. Gone were the condescending smiles and casual dismissals. Instead, they carried tablets loaded with documented incidents of workplace harassment. "We've launched a formal investigation," the HR director announced, not quite meeting Sarah's eyes. "We'll need statements from both of you." Marcus, now able to stand independently for short periods, faced them from his window view. "I assume you've reviewed the social media posts, the breakroom recordings, the security footage from the locker incident." The administrators shifted uncomfortably. Diana was notably absent. Throughout the day, staff members were called into meetings. Sarah continued her duties, aware of the nervous glances following her through the corridors. Tom avoided room 501 entirely, sending a junior orderly in his place. "You never said anything," Marcus observed during physical therapy. "About the recordings." Sarah helped him complete his walking exercises, his steps growing stronger. "Would it have made a difference? Without your influence?" "That's what needs to change," he replied, gripping the support rail. "Quality care shouldn't depend on a patient's ability to demand it." By afternoon, news spread that Diana had been suspended pending investigation. Tom and several others were placed on administrative leave. The hospital grapevine, once buzzing with mockery about Sarah, now whispered about policy changes and ethics reviews. "Ms. Matthews," the HR director caught her after her shift, "we'd like to discuss your experience with our patient care protocols. Your documentation methods have been impressively thorough." Sarah thought of her detailed charts, her careful notes, not just about Marcus's recovery, but about every patient she'd ever cared for. "I maintain the same standards for everyone," she said simply. Later, organizing Marcus's discharge planning paperwork, he would soon transfer to outpatient care. Sarah found preliminary designs for his healthcare technology project. Her name was listed as a key consultant. "Only if you're interested," Marcus said from his chair, where he was reviewing hospital policy documents. "Your insights about dignified patient care are exactly what this industry needs." Sarah looked at the proposal, then at her patient charts. Perhaps change didn't always come from grand gestures or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes it came from simply doing what was right, documenting everything and waiting for the truth to surface. That evening, she found her locker clear of harassment notes. Instead, there was an official letter. The hospital board wanted her input on revising their patient care protocols. The whispers hadn't stopped entirely, but they'd changed. Now they spoke of accountability, of consequences, of long overdue change. Sarah straightened her uniform and headed home, knowing tomorrow would bring new challenges, but this time on her terms. Sarah's first day as director of long-term care began with a stack of resumes on her desk. The hospital was hiring new staff to replace those who'd left during the investigation. Her small office, with its window overlooking the garden, felt surreal after years of break-room corners and borrowed desk space. "The board wants your input on all new hires," the HR director explained, hovering in her doorway. "Given your experience with staff conduct issues." Sarah reviewed applications between checking on patients, including Marcus, who was now walking short distances unassisted. His discharge was scheduled for the end of the week. "Strange being on the other side of the desk?" he asked during his afternoon therapy session, which she still supervised personally. "Stranger managing the people who used to mock me," she replied, updating his progress notes. Several former critics now reported directly to her, their forced politeness a daily reminder of how quickly things could change. A knock at the door introduced Karen, the nurse who'd shown kindness during the worst days. "The new staff orientation materials need review," she said, carefully placing a folder on Sarah's desk, "and Diana's replacement starts Monday." Sarah opened the folder to find her own documentation methods had been incorporated into the standard training protocols. Her system for tracking patient progress, once ridiculed as excessive, was now being implemented hospital-wide. Later that afternoon, she overheard two nurses discussing her promotion. "She earned it," one said. "Remember that elderly patient last winter? She treated him like a king even though he couldn't afford the premium wing." "I heard Bennett's company is developing software based on her methods," the other replied. "Imagine that. All those detailed notes actually meant something." Sarah closed her office door, remembering countless nights spent perfecting those notes, believing that thorough documentation meant better patient care. Now, those same methods would help countless others. The day ended with a meeting about Marcus's discharge. As she reviewed his final charts, she noticed annotations in his hand, suggestions for incorporating her care protocols into his company's healthcare technology. "Your promotion isn't because of me," he said, reading her expression. "It's because you never lowered your standards, even when it cost you." Sarah thought about standards and consequences, about dignity maintained through difficult times. Her new position wasn't victory over her former tormentors. It was validation of her unwavering commitment to proper patient care. That evening, clearing out her old locker, she found one last anonymous note, but this time it read, "Thank you for showing us a better way." She pinned it to her office bulletin board, a reminder that sometimes the best revenge is simply rising above, maintaining your standards, and letting time reveal the truth. 3 months into her new role, Sarah sat in Marcus's company headquarters, surrounded by developers and healthcare specialists. The glass-walled conference room offered a stark contrast to her hospital office, but the focus remained the same: patient dignity. "Show them the care tracking interface," Marcus directed, now fully recovered and back to running his empire. But something had changed in his leadership style, a newfound emphasis on human dignity in technological innovation. Sarah pulled up her documentation system, refined through years of patient care. "The key is capturing micro-improvements," she explained, "small victories that traditional charts might miss." The development team leaned forward, watching as she demonstrated how her tracking method could predict recovery patterns and improve care protocols. Her former hospital experiences had transformed into something revolutionary. "We've integrated biometric monitoring," a young developer explained, pulling up another screen. "But it was your emotional wellness tracking that changed everything." Sarah reviewed the prototype, a combination of her methodical documentation and cutting-edge technology. She thought of all the nights spent perfecting her notes, never imagining they'd lead here. "The hospital board called again," Marcus mentioned during their lunch break. "They want to be the first to implement the full system." "The same board that ignored staff harassment for months?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Sometimes the best lessons come from our biggest mistakes," he replied. "They're rebuilding their entire patient care approach based on your protocols." Back in the development lab, Sarah watched as her simple patient dignity principles transformed into sophisticated software. Each feature reflected a lesson learned during those difficult weeks of Marcus's care, tracking not just physical recovery, but emotional well-being, dignity preservation, and care quality. "We're calling it the Matthews Protocol," Marcus announced near day's end, "unless you object." Sarah thought of her brother, now receiving quality care thanks to her improved situation. She thought of her former critics, some now implementing her methods in their daily work. "As long as it helps patients," she said finally. That evening, returning to her hospital office, she found a message from Dr. Richards. Other hospitals were requesting information about their improved recovery rates. Change, it seemed, had a way of spreading. On her desk sat the original notebook where she'd documented Marcus's care. Every detail, every small victory, every moment of maintained dignity, despite the surrounding chaos. It now served as the foundation for something much bigger than herself. Innovation, she realized, often came from the most unexpected places, even from the whispers and mockery that had once threatened to break her spirit. A year to the day after Marcus Bennett's admission, another high-profile patient arrived at Memorial General Hospital. Sarah watched from her office as media vans gathered outside, their presence eerily familiar. "Tech CEO, skiing accident," Karen reported, handing over the admission forms. "Not paralyzed, but needs extensive care. The staff is already whispering." Sarah smiled, remembering. "Assign Lisa to the case," she decided, naming a nurse known for her exceptional documentation and dignity-focused care. "And make sure everyone has reviewed our new conduct policies." The Matthews Protocol software hummed on her desktop, tracking patient care throughout the hospital. Its implementation had transformed their recovery rates, making Memorial a model for healthcare institutions nationwide. Walking the halls during rounds, Sarah overheard conversations dramatically different from a year ago. Nurses discussed micro-improvements in patient conditions, orderlies shared dignity preservation techniques, and the break room chatter focused on care quality rather than gossip. "Remember when this floor was a battlefield?" Karen mused, accompanying her on rounds. "Now we're hosting seminars on patient dignity for other hospitals." Sarah paused outside room 501, now renovated but forever significant in her memory. Inside, Lisa was carefully documenting the new patient's progress using the system Sarah had pioneered. "Your methods changed everything," Marcus's voice came from behind her. He often visited overseeing the software's implementation, but you never told them about the harassment notes you kept, the ones that proved everything. "Some victories don't need to be public," Sarah replied, watching Lisa demonstrate the same care she'd once been mocked for providing. Later that day, Sarah found a familiar sight, a young nurse being whispered about in the corridors. But this time, she watched as senior staff immediately addressed the behavior, citing the policies that had emerged from last year's events. In her office, Sarah reviewed the hospital's latest patient satisfaction scores, the highest in their history. On her wall hung the framed front page of a medical journal featuring the Matthews Protocol's success stories. "Full circle," she murmured, touching the frame. What had started with mockery and discrimination had evolved into a revolution in patient care. A knock at her door revealed a nervous new nurse. "The board wants to implement your protocol in the pediatric wing," she said. "They think it could transform children's recovery rates." Sarah nodded, already considering the adaptations needed. Sometimes she realized the best response to cruelty wasn't revenge, it was evolution. Sarah stood at the podium of the National Healthcare Innovation Conference, facing an audience of medical professionals from around the country. Behind her, a screen displayed the Matthews Protocol's impact statistics, improved recovery rates, shortened hospital stays, unprecedented patient satisfaction scores. "Dignity in healthcare isn't a luxury," she began, her voice steady. "It's a fundamental right that transforms patient outcomes." In the front row, Marcus sat with his executive team, his company's healthcare division now leading the industry in patient-centered technology. Their eyes met briefly, a shared understanding of how far they'd come from those difficult days in room 501. After her speech, during the reception, Diana approached. She'd found work at a small clinic after the investigation, humbled by the experience. "Your protocol saved my career," Diana admitted quietly. "The clinic implemented it 6 months ago. I finally understood what you were trying to teach us all along." Sarah accepted the admission with a graceful nod, remembering a time when such an encounter would have felt like vindication. Now, it was simply another milestone in a larger journey. Later that evening, in her office at Memorial, Sarah reviewed the day's patient charts. The hospital had become a teaching center, training healthcare professionals in dignity-focused care. The break room where she'd once faced mockery was now a training space for new nurses learning the Matthews Protocol. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Project Dignity, launching globally next month. Your brother's PT clinic will be among the first to receive the full system upgrade. Sarah smiled, thinking of all the patients who would benefit. On her desk sat a frame containing 2 items, the cruel note from her locker a year ago, and beneath it, the journal cover announcing the Matthews Protocol's revolutionary impact on patient care. Sometimes, she reflected, the greatest transformations begin with the smallest acts of maintaining dignity, not just for others, but for oneself. The whispers had long since changed their tune, but Sarah had remained the same, a nurse who believed in documenting every detail, celebrating every small victory, and treating every patient with unwavering dignity. In the end, that had made all the difference.